On January 6, 1957, Frank Sinatra gave an interview to a magazine called Western World. He was 41 years old. He was the most sophisticated performer in American popular music. And he had something he wanted to say about Elvis Presley. He said it. Rock and roll is the most brutal, ugly, degenerate, vicious form of expression it has been my displeasure to hear. He did not stop there. It manages to be the martial music of every side-burned delinquent on the face of the earth. And then the line that Elvis would later say he read 3 times before he believed it. It is sung, played, and written for the most part by Cretinous Goons. The most famous entertainer in America had just publicly called Elvis Presley a cretinous goon. Elvis was 22 years old. He had been famous for exactly 1 year. He was sitting in Graceland when someone handed him the article. The people in the room that day, members of his inner circle, staff who had been at Graceland for months, described watching Elvis read the interview. He read it once. He read it again. He set it down on the table. He was quiet for a very long time. Then he said something that surprised everyone in the room. "He's not wrong about some of it," Elvis said. Not defensive, not angry, thoughtful. The people who heard him say this spent years trying to understand it. What did he mean? Was he capitulating to Sinatra's authority? Was he performing humility? The most coherent explanation came decades later from Charlie Hodge, who had been in that room. Charlie said that what Elvis was doing was something more complicated and more honest than either of those things. He was acknowledging that Sinatra had built something real, that the world Sinatra represented, the arrangements, the phrasing, the specific adult sophistication of popular music at its most refined, was genuinely valuable. And that what Elvis was doing was genuinely threatening to it. Elvis admired Sinatra, Charlie said. He never stopped admiring him. And I think on some level, being attacked by someone he admired was harder than being attacked by someone he didn't care about. For the next 10 years, Sinatra and Elvis existed in a state of public mutual avoidance. They were never on the same stage. They were never in the same room at any documented event. The music press occasionally tried to manufacture a conflict between them, comparing sales figures, charting the changing tastes of American audiences. But the conflict was never real. It was a media construction. What was real was more complicated. In 1960, Elvis returned from the Army. He appeared on a Frank Sinatra television special, "Welcome Home, Elvis." This was Sinatra's idea. He had personally arranged for Elvis to appear. This baffled the press. 3 years earlier, Sinatra had called Elvis's music the martial music of side-burned delinquents. Now he was inviting him onto his program and crooning duets with him. Nobody could explain it. The explanation existed. It had been constructed over several months of quiet conversations between Sinatra's people and Colonel Tom Parker. But the explanation that mattered, the one between the two men themselves, not their representatives, happened on the night of the broadcast. Before the cameras rolled. In a dressing room at the Fontainebleau Hotel in Miami, for approximately 15 minutes, with no one else present. What was said in that room has been the subject of speculation for 65 years. There is one account, one partial account, from a single source. Joey Bishop, a member of the Rat Pack, one of Sinatra's closest friends, a man who had known him for 20 years, described being outside that dressing room. He did not go in. He was not invited. He waited in the corridor. He said the conversation lasted about 15 minutes. He could hear the voices, but not the words. Sinatra's voice, the one he had known for 2 decades, and a younger voice he recognized as Elvis. He said one thing about the quality of the conversation. "It wasn't what I expected," Joey Bishop said. Frank's voice was soft. Frank Sinatra's voice was famously not soft. Not in private. Not with people he was performing for. Not in rooms where he was establishing the terms of a relationship. But soft. When the door opened, both men came out. Sinatra was in front. Elvis was slightly behind. They were not talking. But Joey Bishop described something in the way they were moving. "Like something had been settled," he said. "I don't know what, but something." The broadcast went ahead. It was watched by 67 million Americans, the largest television audience in American history to that point. Elvis and Sinatra sang together. They performed each other's songs. Sinatra sang "Love Me Tender." Elvis sang "Witchcraft." In the footage there is a moment, brief, easy to miss, when Sinatra looks at Elvis while Elvis is singing. Not the look of a host managing a guest, not the professional appreciation of one performer for another. Something more private. Something that looks, in the footage, remarkably like respect. After the broadcast, Sinatra and Elvis developed something that was never publicized and was only reluctantly described by the people who witnessed it. A genuine friendship. Quiet. Intermittent. The kind that doesn't require regular maintenance. They called each other. Not often, but when something happened that required the specific understanding of someone who knew what it felt like to be at the absolute center of American fame, they called each other. Because there were very few people in the world who understood that specific experience. And Elvis and Sinatra were 2 of them. Nancy Sinatra, Frank's daughter, who knew Elvis well in the years that followed, described the relationship in an interview many years later. She said her father never fully explained what happened in that dressing room. She said she asked him once. He was quiet for a moment. "I apologized," Sinatra said. Nancy waited for more. "And he accepted it," Sinatra said. "That's it. That's everything." Frank Sinatra outlived Elvis by 21 years. He died on May 14, 1998. He was 82 years old. When Elvis died in 1977, Sinatra was asked for a statement. He gave one. It was 4 sentences. Elvis Presley was a unique artist, an original in an era of imitators. He was the embodiment of the whole American culture. I'm truly sorry. It was a pleasure knowing him. The man who had called Elvis's music the music of Cretinous Goons called it a pleasure to have known him. That is not a publicist's statement. Publicists do not write, "It was a pleasure knowing him." That is the statement of a man who had been in a dressing room in Miami in 1960, who had said something quietly, who had been heard. and who had spent 17 years being grateful for it.